everyone, happy Friday. And for our American viewers, I hope you had a wonderful, wonderful day yesterday. Now, this evening, I'm talking to Lauren, who is the founder of Polyglot Station and the Language TV Club, and she is also running Language FunFest on the first week of December. And I am so excited to talk to her today, and I think you'll find this conversation really, really useful, because what we're going to be talking about is the relationship between language and fun. Into our everyday language learning tasks. And so I can't wait to introduce you to her. Now, if you don't know Lauren already, she has been in the language learning world for 15 years. You've studied all sorts of languages, haven't you, Lauren? And so she started the Polyglot Station and Language TV Club, which aims to connect language learners through fun activities and helpful resources. And you're now running the Language FunFest. So would you like to tell us a little bit about your language learning journey so far and how it brought you to start your two wonderful ventures?
Yeah, it's a long journey. Really, it started like way before, when I was like 10, maybe. And I got a Berlitz CD-ROM for, I don't know, like a birthday present or something from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
But like I could not pass the first level because you needed a microphone on your computer to record your speaking to be able to like move on to the other stuff. And we didn't have one for our computer. So I never got to go on to the next level. So that was like before all these apps and smartphones and things. And then, I studied French in high school. So that was kind of a standard thing for us in high school, was to either do French or Spanish or German.
Yeah.
And so I chose French, and then I continued French in college. But in college was when I started actually like learning languages on my own. And so I started learning Spanish with like a little book and, a CD kit. And then I tried learning Mandarin with Mango Languages through the library because it was free. And then, so that was like before Duolingo came out. And then after college, I was in grad school living in Boston. And so I got to meet a lot of different people from different countries and everything. And I had a group of friends from Colombia. And so I finally got to practice my Spanish and realized how much fun learning a new language can be. And so from there, then, I just started trying out different languages and different resources. And by that time, there were so many other different apps and online activities and things that you could do. So it really, blossomed and became a variety from that point.
Absolutely. So your topic for today, which I absolutely love, and I feel like this is going to be such a valuable conversation, is language and fun, why enjoyment is key and how to bring more of it into our language learning. And I think a really good place to start would be, I feel like so many of us have really internalized this message that fun is for leisure and learning and, work and all of those kinds of things need to be serious. They need to be intense. They need to be really sort of purposeful.
Yeah.
And sort of the bare bones to get us to what we need to do. And yeah, what do you think has led us to that point?
I'm not sure, but like for language learning, I think a lot of people grow up, and they have to take it at school.
Yeah.
So they think of it as this academic subject, and that it's not a fun thing. It's something that you have to do homework in, and you have to learn all these grammar points. And so I think that's the first idea that people have about language learning, is from that standpoint, from the school-based standpoint. And so I definitely see like the difference between people that I know who are kind of in the language space already and, you know, have heard from many different people learning languages for a long time, and they know that there's other
Yeah.
options out there. It's not all just like traditional classes.
Yeah.
But when I talk to people that are not in that space and don't have that, those types of people, you know, talking to them on social media, or you know, they don't get that communication. They don't know. They really think it's just an academic thing, and you go to class and you do your homework, and that's how you learn. But there's really just so much more to it.
So what sorts of things have you found in the language learning space that you would never have imagined when you were in school learning your languages that way in a traditional classroom?
I mean, if you just even look at the lineup for Language FunFest, like
Tell us
you'll
about it. Absolutely. There will be some people here who haven't heard about Language FunFest yet. So absolutely. What sorts of things are we expecting?
Yeah, so like first off, one example is Jessica, who teaches French, but in a way that is very holistic and involves meditation, involves journaling. And so those are the kinds of activities that you can use to improve your French.
Yeah.
And so like that's one example, for instance. You have Tiara from Speak and Space,
Yes.
who shows you how you can learn through just like your regular card games that you know about, you know, solitaire, or even like Old Maid, things like that.
And I had a conversation with Tiara on an Instagram live very, very recently as well. So for YouTube, I will link that conversation at the end of the video. And also, if you are watching on Instagram, check it out. It is the most recent Instagram live I've done before this one.
Yeah.
So Tiara's doing her card games, and
Yep.
I mean,
Matthew is another one who uses card games for language learning as
yes.
well. Yep.
And it's true. How many people would have thought about bringing their love of gaming into their language learning? Like, I think as well, it's really important to get away from this idea that when we bring our language, when our language enters our lives, it's going to push out all the other things that we love. And I think this could be a really fantastic way of almost reassuring ourselves that we don't have to choose between the language and all of our normal hobbies and interests.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because like I feel like right now all the apps and things are really gamified language learning. So it's not really games, but it's gamified.
Yeah.
But it's focusing on like the learning part, picking up new vocabulary, that sort of thing. But it's funny because I never really kind of put the two and two together, but I don't know if you know this, but my career is as a speech pathologist.
I do know. Yes.
Yeah. And so I work with kids, and we're helping them with their first language, like being able to communicate in their first language. And we're using games all the time, you know?
Of course. Yeah.
And, so it's just funny because like I do that with them all the time. We play games, and like we work on mapping our language goals onto whatever games that we are playing. So I think you can do the same thing as an adult, and first pick the activity or the game that you like, you know, because I know not everybody's into games or, you know, board games or video games, but, you know, whatever activity it is that you do like. If you like, you know, hiking with a friend, or you like writing, or you like reading, you like watching TV, you know, so pick your activity first, and then you can map your language goals onto whatever activity it is.
Absolutely. And you mentioned they're watching TV, and I think it is so important that we do. TV is a great way to make sure that we're using our language in a way that really does interest us, we're watching our documentaries about the things that we'd never find in a textbook, or we're listening to stories, and it brings all the vocabulary in of things that we would genuinely want to use in day-to-day life. Because I know a lot of us, and especially in my community, one of the things we really focus on is getting out of chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, myself, my family, my city, and really feeling like a whole person in our language as soon as possible, and making sure that we kind of create a map of all our native level, our native self interests, passions, experiences, and working as quickly as possible really to translate those so that we do feel three-dimensional in our language. And TV has that ability, doesn't it? Because first of all, the conversations that you have with a person when you've both watched a show, the cultural knowledge that comes from it, watching how relationships and people's personalities play out in a language, because that's something a textbook can't do. You know, it's not going to showcase the funny one and the really fiery one and the like shy person, and you need to see that in a language, don't you, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the different ways that you might go around asking somebody a question based on what the context is. And
And so is this something, I know you have Language TV Club, which is kind of like a book club, isn't it, but for a show?
yeah.
And in, well, I mean, what language are you working on at the moment in Language TV Club?
So right now we do Spanish, French, Italian, and German like concurrently, and they happen regularly. I personally have been, so I recently participated in French. I didn't do series right now, which is actually really interesting because it's about somebody that's famous in France, Bernard Tapie. And so I can hear some of their discussions sometimes, and it's really interesting. But Italian, like I'll participate in that one too. And then I'm hosting the Spanish one right now. And it's been really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. So for people who are looking at their own language routine right now, and maybe they're just sort of stuck in a rut, or they're finding that it feels more and more of a chore every day to start in the morning, or maybe they're constantly clock watching, what kinds of things would you suggest that they ask themselves or look at in order to do a bit of a review and find some ways to bring some fun in?
Yes. So the first question I would say to ask yourself is why are you learning the language? Like, what's your ultimate goal? Is it so that you can travel? Then maybe you want to consider, watching travel documentaries in that language. Or maybe it's so you can like have a dinner conversation with somebody, and maybe you need to practice that kind of thing. So that would be the first thing to kind of direct you towards what kind of activities to use. And then the second thing would be like, look at what your schedule already looks like. What are you spending your time doing? And what activities that you're doing could you just do in a different language? So like if you are cooking, let's say like you like to try one new recipe every week, and maybe you just look for a recipe in your target language and you cook it that way. Or even watch a cooking show so you can get, inspiration for that recipe. So I would say like look at activities that you're already doing and see what you can do in your target language.
Absolutely. And then what kinds of, so I think we should talk as well about different kinds of fun in our language learning. So one of them is obviously direct mapping with your hobbies in your normal life. So if your natural interests are true crime or sports, or I don't know, nature documentaries, then you kind of know where to go with it. You play your sort of sports video games with the language set as your new language, or you watch the documentaries, or you listen to the podcasts. What other sorts of things, if people are thinking, well, actually, my natural interests are really far away from my ultimate goal. I really need to be focusing here right now rather than, you know, my niche insect interests over here. What sorts of things can they do when the content itself isn't their natural, you know, area of expertise or passion? What sorts of things can they do then to make the process fun, even if maybe the content isn't?
Yeah. At that point, you know, you'll probably do a more like gamified approach.
Yeah.
Um, and you don't necessarily have to use an app for this. Like you can use, for example, like what Tiara does with Solitaire is that she has challenge cards within the game. So
Yes.
every time like a challenge card comes out, you need to use that. And practice a specific skill or answer a specific question or something
I
like that.
see.
So,
Yeah.
so you can take a game that you enjoy or even an activity that you enjoy. So let's say, for example, like you really enjoy walking or something, right? You like to take really long walks. And so at every quarter mile, you have to review this one thing that you had in your mind. And so you have to, for something like that, where you're not like with a pen and paper and stuff, you got to review it beforehand so you know what to think about. But yeah, so it's more like taking something that you enjoy and that you can map the goals onto it if it's something like really specific that you need to learn.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And what would you say to the people who feel like they're not studying properly or they're not doing a topic justice unless they are in their office or at a desk with their computer? Like, do you think that we are sort of, do you think that there are ways in which people can take their learning outside the house, maybe make it a lot more movement and things like that as well? And if so, what methods or ways would you suggest for people that really just are not happy at a desk?
Yeah. And it goes back to like kind of what's your personality type too, because I know there are some people that really do love checking things off and like making a list and then planning it out throughout the day. And like if that brings you joy, then go for it. Like that's your kind of fun. So maybe you would like doing that. But then there's like the people who are the opposite of that and like want to be spontaneous and flexible and movement I think is good for anybody when you're learning something new.
Mhm.
So whether it's just like walking or like taking a dance class, even like you can watch exercise videos in your target language if that's something that you would do normally. For example, like I've been really into gardening and permaculture lately.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so I've been trying to watch the videos in Spanish to learn, how to plant things and stuff. So that kind of gets me outside into nature and gets that, being out in nature is so good for you. But also like I'm using my language as well. And then even too, if I get to like garden with somebody or even like talk to somebody else who likes to garden about, okay,
Yeah.
what are you planting now? And this is what I'm planting and stuff. And we can do that in our target language. And then that's, even better.
Hmm. And I bet through that you're learning words that maybe you didn't even know in English to start with, because it's a really niche. I don't know the language of permaculture.
Yes, yeah, that definitely happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I also love what you say there about being wanting to be spontaneous. You know, I think a lot of us, again, it's a message that we don't know we've internalized until we start really looking at our own language learning lives or just learning lives in general. But this idea that in order to learn, we should have a set study routine and we should have planned it out in advance, and we should know what we're doing every, time blocking, or on a Wednesday night I do this. And I love what you said about the fact that actually it really is personality first. And if people want to make all the lists and, do it that way, they can. But it's not a necessary part of the language learning journey. And it's possible, absolutely possible, to do it without and just by exploring. I think it was such an important thing to say, and I'm really glad that you did.
Yeah. I think too, like, there's so many great strategies and tips out there, and I think you can still incorporate those things. Like, for example, consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So many people recommend, consistency with your learning. And
Yeah.
you can do that without having to do a drill-based exercise or like completing this worksheet in the workbook. You can do consistency and like do the same. It doesn't have to be the same activity every week, but like if you can make it a routine that like that's what you do every week at this time, or when you do this other activity, you do get that consistency without even trying,
Yes. Definitely. And I did a podcast episode a few weeks ago called The Dark Side of Consistency. And that was the fact that quite often we so internalize the idea of we are consistent people that either we carry on doing things long after it feels like it's not really working for us anymore, just because, we are consistent and we do things consistently. Or we're afraid to start things for the fear that when we do, it's going to be like a roller coaster that we can't get off. Mm-hmm. Because, once we do it, we need to do it for the long haul, or we need to do it every single day, or whatever it is. We amass a streak, and it almost intimidates us out of even starting.
Yeah. Talked about the streaks on our last Instagram live, actually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is it's a really big feature of gamified apps, isn't it? And it's something that I think it's a double-edged sword, really. For some people, it's, one of the ultimate motivators of, I cannot break my 3,000-day streak. Yeah, for some people it does the opposite, and it means that either they're afraid to start, or they carry on doing something just because they can't break their streak.
Yeah, or like once they break the streak, then it's just all over and they can't do anything with it at all.
All or nothing, and now it's done. Yes, definitely. So have you got any particular stories or anything where you found either a person, or maybe it was you, who had a particular language learning method or feature that was so out there that you thought, I would never have thought of that. I did not know it was possible to learn a language that way. Anything come up for you?
I don't know. Like for me, nothing is so outlandish, just because I'm so used to like learning through different methods. Mm-hmm. And just like by working with kids too, like we learn by like the craziest things, by like throwing a ball at the wall, or like trying to get a beanbag into like a little container or something, so it's just like, for me, I don't know if there's anything that can be super outlandish, but I do feel generally inspired, and feel like I appreciate others' creativity so much, and that they can really make something that can work with a lot of different people. Because like I can make these like weird language games off the top of my head, but it's not anything structured, and it's not really something that like people would want to replicate a lot, so I mean, we have like the language TV club, which is fun, but that's something that I feel like is almost an intuitive way of learning, because you have the listening practice, and then when you speak to the people, you have the speaking practice, and then you also learn the vocabulary, so it's not like a very outlandish thing. I don't.
But it's also the sense of community, isn't it? You know, you're not just watching this thing on your own. You've got people to talk about it afterwards, because we do that in our native language with our friends. But if we're watching something in Spanish or in German or whatever language that we're studying, the chances of us being able to speak about it with friends and family is a lot lower, you know, especially if we're learning outside of that country and we're not surrounded by a language learning community. I just, yeah, that so much of the pleasure of watching films and shows and reading books is being able to discuss it with other people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest reason why the TV club started.
It's so important, definitely. And so is there anything else that you would maybe like to offer as advice for people who are just feeling a bit stuck, a bit bored, or don't really know how to make their language learning better?
Well, first thing, I guess, get your free ticket to Language FunFest.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally free, and it's 3 days of just having fun, meeting people who like languages, and just learning about what all of these amazing presenters are doing with languages. And you can, you know, get some creative ideas. You can create some spin-off groups with other. So I think that's like, you know, my number one recommendation.
Mm-hmm. So, well, let's talk about Language Fun Fest next then. Who would love Language Fun Fest? What languages should they maybe be studying? What level might they be at? Who would love Language Fun Fest?
So if you have any kind of interest in languages, you'll probably love Language Fun Fest, because it's just a bunch of language learners getting together and trying out new activities in their target language.
Mm-hmm.
We will have different kinds of activities. So some will be more relaxed and passive activities, for example, like the meditation and journaling. Some things will be a little bit more active, like we'll have trivia games and, you know, guessing that language quizzes. And then we'll also have chances to just go into like little chat rooms with target language so you can practice. And so there's going to be a variety, and so it can be like, it can be any language that you're learning, but I would say like the majority of our resources are in things like French, Spanish, Portuguese, and then there's some resources that are, you know, multiple languages included. And so really, like, you can use any of the strategies for whatever your target language is. And as well, like if you are learning a language that's not super common, you can see if there's anybody else attending that's also learning the language, and maybe you can, you know, pair up and do something together. So.
Mm-hmm. And when is it? And do people need to join live? Or if not, how long do they have afterwards to catch up?
Great questions. Very important. So it's next week, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Week away. It will be our kickoff call. So that will be December 1st. And it's going to be at 1 p.m. Eastern US time. So that will be 6 p.m. your time, right? And it's going to go until Sunday, December 3rd. And so we'll have sessions planned out throughout the weekend. And then when the sessions are not running, you can still enter the event and go into the little language chat rooms if you want. Because we'll have people from all different time zones. So you never know who's going to be awake and there. And then we also have a Facebook group too to connect. So that's there as well. The presentations will be available for 24 hours after they're held. But if you do want ongoing access to them, like way after the event, there is a ticket upgrade and you can get that. And you'll also get a fun book that has like some of the strategies that we talked about today, as well as some templates and just creative ideas to use your languages. And then there's like another upgrade too, which has bonuses from all of our presenters in there, and it's like really awesome. I just kind of get amazed by what people have contributed to this super pack, and so it's just really cool. And I think the experience as a whole is just going to be really great because there are people from so many different just cultures and countries and languages, and everybody has their own version of fun. So it'll be fun to kind of share that with each other.
Mm-hmm. And for people who are listening, who are thinking, I'd love to join, but I'm worried that my French or my Italian or whatever just isn't quite strong enough yet and I won't keep up. Do you have a particular sort of minimum level in mind, or do you think people will get some, you know, a lot out of it regardless of where they're at in their journey?
Oh yeah, I would say like even if you haven't started learning the language yet, like just join, you know, it's totally free, so you can just come in and check out the activities that you're interested in. And it might give you a good idea of where to start and how to create good language habits from the get-go so that you can start doing activities that are meaningful and joyful for you from the beginning rather than getting into like, oh, well, if I'm learning this, I should probably buy the workbook and just study it every day, you know? So, yeah, I think it'll be helpful even if you don't even have any level in the language yet. And, you don't have to go to the chat rooms, but even if you did, you could potentially just listen and hear other people and just get to meet them so that when you do start to get to a conversational level, you can message them and be like, oh, hey, let's chat. So yeah, I think it's just beneficial no matter what level you're at.
Yes, and I think that's a really good point as well, that if you aren't in a traditional classroom with all these people around you at exactly your level, um, the other alternative for a lot of people is be in their house listening exclusively to native speakers, podcasters or TV shows or, you know, whatever it is. And we really miss that. I think we miss hearing other learners, hearing conversations at B1 level or B2 level, and sort of realizing there is a lot to be done between where we are now and the native speakers that we spend all our time listening to. So yeah, I think it's really valuable to have the opportunity to just listen to other learners.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, even if you're making mistakes, even if they're making mistakes, like no one's gonna judge you here, because the Language Fun Fest is really just about having fun. It's not about who's the best or who's great at learning, and it's just really about enjoying the process.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And if people are interested and they would like to look at maybe some of the rest of your work, or they'd like to find out more about FunFest, where can they go and where can they find you?
So they can go to our Instagram bio, and there's a link there for, I think everything is there on our Polyglot Station account. So there's the link for the Language Fun Fest. There's a link for the Language TV Club. We also have some like language t-shirts I've created.
Tell us about that. What are your language t-shirts?
Yeah, I haven't really advertised them much. I did like when I first designed them. So it's not really like a core part of the business, but I really just designed them for fun. But it just like says like languages or like speak French with me, kind of like t-shirts and things like that. So.
All right. And so I will, of course, your Polyglot Station account will be linked to the replay of this video. And yes, so they're going to your Instagram bio for tickets to FunFest and for Language TV Club. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with me on your Friday afternoon and for basically just helping us to think more about how we can make our language learning just a little bit more joyful. And have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all so much for joining, and I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.